Shaun Livingston. Back in 2004, he was a 5-star recruit in high school. By the time he graduated, he was ranked as the #1 point guard in the country and the #2 overall player, right behind Dwight Howard. He was also named Mr. Basketball of Illinois. At 6'7", Livingston was exceptionally tall for a point guard, but we've seen over the years that tall point guards have a pretty good track record. That was a major asset that made him stand out. However, as we all know, Shaun Livingston never blossomed into the superstar he was expected to. Despite the insane amount of hype with comparisons to guys like Penny Hardaway and Magic Johnson, Livingston went from being a hopeful prospect to barely hanging on to his NBA career. But by the end of his career, it worked out relatively okay. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today let's talk about Shaun Livingston's incredible NBA journey. Before the 2004 draft commenced, this was known as a very hyped up high school class, which eventually saw 8 players get drafted into the first round straight out of high school. As I mentioned earlier, Livingston was the #2 ranked high school player in the nation, so he was a highly sought after commodity. Initially, he planned on going to college to play for Duke, but he backed out of that and put his name into the draft. With the 4th overall pick, he was selected by the LA Clippers. Now, at this time, just like the rest of the franchise's history, they were pretty bad. But they were improving at a rapid pace. In the early 2000s, they managed to acquire Elton Brand and Corey Maggette, 2 guys who would develop very quickly and be the focus of this Clippers team. As a rookie, Livingston was mainly the backup point guard behind Marko Jaric, although he would sporadically start some games too. Unfortunately, his early signs of being injury-prone started to show. He suffered a slight shoulder injury and then a couple of complications with his knees. Livingston finished his rookie season with only 30 games played, averaging about 7 points and 5 assists. By his sophomore season, the Clippers improved even further, winning 47 games and reaching the playoffs for the first time since the 1990s. However, Livingston would miss 21 games this year due to a lower back injury. While normally unrelated to his previous injuries, it was an ominous sign that there was some imbalance in Livingston's body. Livingston performed quite well in his first ever playoff appearance and even worked his way to become the 6th man on the team. He averaged 28 minutes a game in the playoffs and used his size and length as a huge advantage. The majority of point guards were nowhere near as big or versatile as Livingston was, and that proved to be very valuable. In the first round, Shaun would spend time guarding the Denver Nuggets' 2 best players, Andre Miller and Carmelo Anthony. And unlike other point guards, he would not get roasted off a switch. He stood his ground and held his own, even against the bigger stars. Fast forward to his 3rd season, and now Livingston's career started to ramp up quickly. At this point, he was 21 years old and finally given the starting point guard role. He was averaging career highs across the board, over 9 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists, and shooting a career high 46% from the field. It was this season that saw his career take a drastic turn for the worse. On February 26, 2007, Livingston suffered arguably the worst injury that ever happened on an NBA court. In the middle of a fast break, Livingston was going towards the rim, did a layup, and then landed awkwardly on his left knee. He injured 3 major ligaments in his knee. An MRI revealed that he tore his meniscus, he tore his ACL, he tore his MCL, he tore his PCL, and also dislocated his kneecap. This injury, well, more specifically, all these injuries at once, was unprecedented, and it even confused the Clippers' medical staff. They didn't know where to begin. According to an article from 2007, the Clippers had not determined who would perform the procedure, whether it would be completed in one step or in stages. Daly, the team's physician, planned to consult with colleagues from across the nation before making his recommendation to Livingston. Do we pick 1 ligament, 2 ligaments, 3 ligaments all at once, or do we stagger it? That's where we are right now, Daly said. My nature is to be conservative, and I have seen people who have had this done by other people and it hasn't worked out. The most shocking part of the injury was how it happened. He never got hit by anyone, nor did it seem like he landed that hard. How is it possible that he suffered the worst knee injury in history just by landing awkwardly after a layup? Nobody really knew. At the time, it was considered a freak incident, but judging from his injury history, maybe his body simply could not handle that much force. He needed to train differently and learn how to land better. Kinda similar to what happened to Derrick Rose. After he tore his ACL and got a couple of more knee injuries, he had to change his game and change his landing habits in order to prolong his career. For Livingston, in his first 3 seasons, he was known to be an explosive athlete, with a ridiculous first step and a very quick jump. After an extensive surgery, Livingston recalled what it was like when leaving the hospital. He said, "The knee was all deformed, bloodied up, and leaking with pus. I just couldn't move it. Stiff. It was like I had a spare leg. All of my quad was skinny. It was like a pole with a pineapple in the middle of it." As a result, Livingston missed the rest of the 2006-07 season, and also sat out the entire 2007-08 season. Afterwards, his rookie contract expired and the Clippers were unsure of keeping him. Doctors said that he will never be able to walk normally again, and he actually said himself that he had to learn how to walk all over again. It was very unlikely he'd return to the NBA, so the Clippers made the decision and let him go. Throughout the next 3 seasons, Livingston had 3 short stints in Miami, Oklahoma City, DC, and even some time in the D-League. He signed a couple of minimum contracts because that's all he was offered. Teams were uncertain that he'd ever play meaningful minutes again. It wasn't until 2010 when he signed his first major contract in a while. It was a modest 2-year, $7 million deal with the Charlotte Bobcats. In that season, he shocked everyone by playing in 73 games, a career high at the time. Because he was no longer the same athlete and had nowhere near the same explosiveness, Livingston was forced to change his game. Around this time, he started working on his post-up game and mid-range jumper, which is what he became known for as his career progressed. A few more years go by, and after a few more brief stints on other teams, Livingston found himself in Brooklyn. This was where he found his niche, and many fans believe Brooklyn was the place he revived his career. In the 2013-14 season, he played 76 games and started in 54 of them. Inserting him into the starting lineup proved to be the change they were looking for. According to an article back in 2014, the Nets were a top 5 defensive team when Livingston was on the floor. NBA writer John Schumann stated, "Playing small, the Nets have struggled on the glass, haven't blocked many shots, and haven't done a great job of keeping their opponents off the free throw line. But they've had defensive success due to contesting shots and forcing mistakes." As a 6'7" point guard with a 6'11" wingspan, Livingston is the embodiment of Brooklyn's new identity. He can smother opposing guards and switch onto forwards. He wasn't exactly a true point guard, but as he aged, Livingston became a steady floor general. His numbers were not impressive at face value, but he did everything the team needed him to do. On offense, if he saw a mismatch, he would attack the defender. On defense, his size allowed him to guard point guards to small forwards. A valuable skill set in an era where teams were starting to value versatile defenders much higher. This leads us to the summer of 2014. Livingston was offered a 3-year contract, the longest contract he's gotten since his rookie season. It was well-deserved. On the Warriors, Livingston surpassed everyone's expectations, helping them win 3 championships in 5 years. His playstyle was so different than anyone else on the roster. With Curry and Clay splashing threes, Livingston was splashing middies, asserting his dominance against smaller players. To have a guy come off the bench and completely change the style of play was crucial, and that's what he provided for Golden State, a different look, but at the same time, he fit in with the other players too, because of his court vision and defense. Over the 5 appearances in the finals, Livingston had some great games. Game 1 of 2016 against Cleveland, where he scored 20 points on 8 for 10 shooting, leading his team in scoring and getting the win. Game 2 and Game 4 in 2017, where he scored 10 points each on great efficiency. In the 2018 finals, he averaged 7 points a game on 87% shooting. While Livingston never blossomed into the superstar talent he was expected coming out of high school, he still put together a great career. He played well above his expectations in Golden State because nobody knew he still had that much game. Looking back, his career arc was quite interesting. From a 5-star recruit to suffering the worst injury in probably the history of NBA basketball, and then fighting his way back onto an NBA roster. From 2008 to 2014, he was a journeyman, looking for any team to give him a chance. During this rough time, he said, "You can look at it as a failed opportunity and failures because I didn't make it with those teams, or I didn't get a contract, or they moved me or brought in someone over me. It was always something. I was just using that as fuel and encouragement while always having the right perspective." Warriors GM Bob Myers described him the best. He said, "He had an authentic kind of gratification that resonated within him that he showed me when I'd speak to him. Oftentimes in this business, you move so fast that you don't take time to really appreciate what he accomplished. He's seen the valley and he's seen the top of the mountain." Anyway, that's all folks. That sums up the story of Shaun Livingston. Let me know your thoughts on him, and do you think he could have been a perennial all-star if he didn't blow up his leg? Thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.